Today we're going to talk about coil pots. These are hand-built forms made from coils and shapes and designs made out of clay that all get smoothed and scored together. You can see here that the creativity and the possibilities are endless of what you can make. Many of these are more vase forms, but you can see that you can make functional things like mugs, you can make them sculptural. They don't have to hold anything, or they can. It's really up to you. And you can see how the attention to detail and creativity and taking your time can make these look really cool. And what you're going to notice in these is lots of repetition, lots of variation and different designs, and then all of each individual element work together to make one great piece, or one piece as a whole. Our requirements that we have for distance learning are going to be that you show variation with line and shape. You need to have at least 3 different variations of shape and line in your piece. 5 inches high, minimum, and we need it to be watertight and completely smooth on the inside so that it can hold water and be really strong. Remember, you can make anything you can imagine, so get creative. Make it weird, make it different, make it one of a kind, and have fun.
Alright, coil pots. Let's take a look at what we need to do to get started in making these. You're going to maybe need a wire tool to cut some clay, a sponge, you're going to want your bat, you're going to want a wood knife for some smoothing, and then you're going to want something to score with. So either a fork, a pin tool, this is a pin tool. You can use a paper clip, you can use the end of a comb, you can use like wire, anything that'll make scratches in the clay is going to work for that. So the first thing you want to do is get your clay and cut it out. I actually want to roll a slab, so I'm going to cut halfway across and then make sure it's level. And I'm going to cut basically like a slice of bread, like that, okay? Why? Because that makes rolling a slab a lot easier. Alright, now I need to roll out the base of this. I don't know, basically I don't know what you want for the base, but anything is possible. It could be square, round, anything. For this demo I'm going to do a round one because that's the easiest to demonstrate and it's the most common, but be creative, have fun with it. So I just have this ABS pipe here. You can use PVC, you can use a rolling pin, a wooden dowel, anything that's just flattened. Like even kids are using their water bottle, which I thought was such a good idea. So I'm just rolling this out. Now if it starts to stick to the pipe a little bit, take a paper towel, dry it off, right? So that can happen. Now one thing that people do when they roll, they have a tendency to roll like this, and then sometimes that gets a low spot. And so what I do is I'll roll from the center and then push to the edge. See how it's stuck there? And then I go to the center and then I push to the edge. Rotate it 90 degrees. Rotate it, go to the center and then push away. Just like that. So every time I rotate it and I push away, what I want to get is I want to get about 3/8 of an inch thick slab here. So that's and I'm flipping it over every once in a while too, and that just kind of helps keep this from sticking too much to this. And then I've actually got like a dent in my pipe, so I'm going to make sure I don't use the area with the dent in it because that's transferring to my clay. So I'm almost there. Don't rush this. You don't want thick spots or thin spots. Like when you move your hand over it, you want it to be nice and flat and smooth the whole way. So I'm going to do maybe one last all the way over and then check it. Yeah, that's pretty good. I could go a tiny bit thinner, so I'm going to do that. Let's do one more this direction. So starting here and then pushing away, and I'm going to go to the center and pull towards me. Trying to make sure I don't. I'm just going to go this real light with this one. When you roll, you can push down, but don't push too hard because you don't want to get a thin spot. Alright, that's pretty good. So that thickness is about the width of my pinky, that's what I want. So if you put your slab down, put your pinky next to it, and it's about the same height, you're good. Now what I want to do is cut out the shape of the base of my coil pot. So I've got my slab ready to go, and I'm going to use this. Why am I using this instead of just freehanding it? Well, because if I freehand it and I just try and draw a circle, it's not going to be very accurate. It's not going to look that great. And if you want something circular, make it perfect. Make it really circular. Now, I could use the top and it's going to be more stable, or I could use the bottom and it's going to be less stable. For you guys, I would suggest using the top for your first one, like something that's at least 3 or 4 inches across. For the sake of this demo, I'm going to use the bottom. And what's nice about this is I can just go right over here in the corner of my slab, push down a little bit, make a impression, and there. Now I've got this perfect circle that I can now cut out. And again, you're going to want to be real careful when you cut this out, because you might as well make it look good. And again, like, this is narrow. This is probably too narrow for somebody just starting out. This is only a couple inches across. And so, like, when you have a really tall coil pot and you make something this small, it's going to tip over real easy. So you want to be careful of that. Okay, so now I've got the base rolled out. Move this to the side. And I'm actually going to put that on my bat. So I'm going to put it right here. Okay. And then I'm going to slide that up. And now what I need to do is I need to make coils. And so what I do with my slab, and the way that I make coils, is I'll just make some slices, just like that. So I start with this. And then you can either go with your hand or you can do it on the table, but you're going to roll out basically little cylinders or little coils of clay, which is why it's called a coil pot. Now, when you roll, don't push down too hard. You don't need too much pressure, just a little bit. And you want it to be round. And sometimes when you roll, like, you'll get a high spot, like right here, it feels a little higher. And so I can just push that down right there and flatten it. Okay, because I want it nice and round. So when you look at it from the back, you can see how there's kind of like one part, like it's a little higher right there. So you want it rounded. So I'm just gonna kind of round it. And I use my palm more than my fingers because that tends to get me a smoother coil. The other thing I wanna do is make sure that I do full length rotations, meaning I go back and forth far enough. If I just do little rotations like that, I will flatten it out in one spot. Okay, so that's a pretty good coil, and a good thickness is about the end of your pinky. If you go too thick, it's gonna look like hot dogs. It's not gonna look good. If you go too thin, it's gonna look like noodles, and it's gonna take you forever, and it's not gonna be very strong. So I'm gonna take it, and now I'm gonna put this on here, and I'm sure you can guess how I do that. So I just slip and score. So I'm gonna slip and score that on. So I'm gonna get a little bit of water. So I have my water here, and I'm just gonna put water along the perimeter, and then I'm gonna score it up. Score a lot. Don't halfway on your scoring, because your scoring is what's going to hold it together. So this is where a fork is nice, because you have 4 little prongs to score with. So make sure your scoring is at least that much. Now I'm going to add a little bit of water to the actual coil, and I'm going to push this up here. Now there's one more thing about the coils that I want to say. If you roll the coils, so my canvas was already wet, so what I did is I took a sponge and I rolled some moisture into it. But if I roll this coil somewhere that's dry, it's going to dry it out. So make sure you wet the canvas before you roll the coil. So now I'm just scoring this up, and score deep enough and close enough so that it actually attaches well. Alright, cool. So there's that. Alright, now I'm going to attach that on there. And so I start right here, and it's getting a little bit slimy, so I don't want to add any more water. And as I go along, I just manipulate it into a circular shape and then compress it in, and I push it as hard as I can without messing it up, right? Like, I don't want to dent it, but I also want to push it hard enough so it actually stays. Also, based on my sketch that I made, I want this to flare out, right? So this next row, I don't want to put directly over. I want to put over and out just a little bit, right? So like if this is my coil, I'm gonna put the next coil not over it, but out a little bit so it flares out. So think about the shape that you want. And make sure that that area is also got some moisture on it so that when you score it, it will stick. And so I'm gonna score this part up and out. And then I just overlap. You don't have to, you can cut right there. Like if I don't want that seam right there, I can just cut it. But I'm fine with it. So notice how the end of this gets a little small right there. I'm actually gonna do something creative right there. So I wanna make sure that this is going in the direction I want, but I'm gonna take it and I'm gonna curl that in on itself, just to put like a fun little swirl right there that I think will look neat. And just add some variation of line. And then I'll just have to go up over that on this next row. So there it is. So that's gonna be the start of it. Now, everything in process looks messy. That's okay. We're gonna go back and clean it up. I'm gonna, real quick, I'm gonna keep going and speed up the video, and I'm gonna make more coils and try and get this thing a few inches high. One thing I want to say right here, if your coil is lumpy and if it's lumpy and it's not clean, it's not going to look clean on your piece. So take the time to make really nice smooth coils. Go slowly, don't rush this part of it. Right where that swirl ends, so I'm going to push that right up against it. I could actually put a swirl going the other direction right next to it, but too late. That would look cool though. Now, I'm about 1 inch into it, right? And you can kind of see it starting to take shape. You can kind of see it taking form, but it's messy, and that's okay. Like, it's okay if it's messy. We're gonna clean it up. So about every inch or two, stop what you're doing and clean it up, and then you're gonna score and smooth the inside. So let me show you how to clean it up. And hopefully, I may have to use my other camera real quick for this because it might be a better angle. So let me start it. So when you clean it up, when you're holding it on the bat, be careful it doesn't slide off. But basically, take your knife or whatever, or your fingernail, and just draw over your lines or your seams. I don't know if you can see that very well, but I'll do half of it clean, and then I'll leave half of it messy, and you'll be able to see the contrast, the difference between the two. And then I'm gonna take a sponge, and I actually like a half sponge better. Now look, if you compare that part which is still a little lumpy looking, so I'm gonna fix that some more. But compare that with that side, looks a lot better, right? Like it's a lot smoother. And so you're gonna wanna go along and just try and clean everything as good as you can and get it as rounded and as smooth as possible every 2 or 3 inches. There we go. That looks okay. That coil's a little fat right there, which I don't love, and you can kind of see how that's weird, but that's the basic idea for the beginning of it. And then you just keep on going and keep on going, and then eventually you'll have your coil shape or your mug or whatever it is that you're making. Now, what do we do to the inside? Well, let me show you. So I'm going to do half of the inside, just like I did half of the outside. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my hand right here, and I'm going to score perpendicular. And the reason my hand's here is to protect it from falling over. And I'm going to score perpendicular to the coils. Perpendicular just means if the coils are horizontal, I'm going to score vertical. Or if the coils are vertical, let's go horizontal. Or if they're diagonal, just go perpendicular to them. Okay? And then what that does, if you can see it, man, this thing is soft. So you can see how it's all scored up. And then I'm going to take the back of this guy. Now, you guys all have a wood knife, and hopefully it's in pretty good shape, and you have this part of it. If you don't have a wood knife yet, use your finger, but this wood knife works really good. And I'm going to, again, put it on the table. I'm going to give it backing on one side, and then I'm going to go with the direction of the coils, or, it doesn't actually matter that much, but I always start going this way. And I just, like I'm trying to smooth peanut butter into bread to make it perfectly smooth. Do the same thing. So you try and get that nice and smooth. And you're gonna see it start to just blend together, so that we don't let it dry out too much. Alright, and then now I get in there with my sponge, and then I smooth that, right? If I get anywhere that I can't smooth out all the way, I can take a little, like let's say, like right here. Let's say I can't get that very smooth, right? Well, I can just take like a tiny little bit of clay, just a little bit, and I can put that in there, right? So I just put it in there, and you can't probably see that super well, but that then fills in any gaps that I can't fill naturally, just by scoring. There, that looks pretty good. Alright, take a look at that. So see how that's watertight and super smooth? But then look at that side. Doesn't look very good. The smoothing of it increases the strength like 200%, like so much. So you have to smooth out the inside, don't forget that. So right here, this is just the beginning of what I'm gonna make. I'm gonna keep going here, but you're gonna go up to your required height and make sure that you utilize, or make sure that you're showing variation with line by having multiple shapes on it, right? Like not just horizontal lines, not just vertical lines. Like put some swirls in there, put some squares of clay in there, and swirls and squares are super easy to make. Little spheres are easy to make. You just roll the clay and you just manipulate it into whatever shape you want. There's gonna be, as you saw, there was a ton of examples of different variations of line and shape that you can do in your coil pot. So have fun, be creative, make your coil pot stand out from a distance. Like when you look at it, you're like, there's mine, because it's so unique and it's so different. Have fun with it.